Tonight, a major shakeup at the Thunder Bay Police Services Board.
And eliminate the perverse funding incentives that not only don't fund prevention, but incentivize the removal of children.
Calling for solutions on how to stop missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
One of the things that we've started saying is, remember that the public majority is Inuit.
And Nunavut looks to reclaim its power and run its own government. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A vigil was held in Thunder Bay today to remember the life of Braden Shakeup. The vigil took place here in Chapels Park, the same place Shakaup's body was found last Sunday. Community members gathered to support his family, the 17-year-old from Webekwe First Nation, a fly-in community approximately 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. And we've got much more coverage of the unfolding events with the Thunder Bay Police coming up later in the show. We'd like to hear what you have to say. Here's how to contact us. Send an email to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. The final submissions for the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls wrapped up today in Ottawa. And with that, the end of oral submissions from parties withstanding. Annette Francis was there as the inquiry winds down to a final report.
President Johannes Lamp of the Nunavut government began the day's session. He said in order to address and reduce the incidence of violence and deaths among the Labrador Inuit, social equity and inclusion is critical.
We are of the view that measurable actions must be taken in addressing the poor social determinants of health. Inuit self-governance and participation in national, provincial, territorial governance is the most effective means of ensuring policies, programs, services, and practice approaches are appropriate for Indigenous communities and peoples.
Catherine Hensel of the Association of Native Child and Family Service Agencies of Ontario urged the Commission to ensure that the proposed federal legislation on child welfare not be limited to unreserved children.
And we know that many, if not most, Indigenous children who have contact with child welfare, possibly not most, but are in urban centres or off reserve. So we will also be urging the Commission to make recommendations that the provinces correct and reverse and eliminate the perverse funding incentives that not only don't fund prevention but incentivize the removal of children.
In the past 2 weeks, the Commission heard from 53 parties. The next step is to analyze the submissions and evidence. The final report will be submitted by April 30th, 2019. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Nunavut Tungavik represent the interest of Inuit in Nunavut. At their most recent meeting, the group decided to explore self-government and have set off on a year-long search to discover what kind of self-government Inuit in Nunavut want and need. Our Ken Driscoll sat down with the NTI president to find out what self-government means to Inuit and what that means for Nunavut's land claim.
The Nunavut Agreement turned 25 this year. The territory it created, Nunavut, turns 20 in the new year. Many of the goals in that have never been reached. Nunavut Tungavik put forward a motion at their annual general meeting to explore the idea of self-government. Why? They say the public government, the government of Nunavut, isn't doing enough for Inuit.
Often the response back to us advocating for Inuit-specific programs is, but we're a public government, and we can't do that specifically for Inuit. And so I think it's important that one of the things that we've started saying is, remember that the public majority is Inuit.
Tunngavik had to sue the feds for $1 billion because they never funded education like the agreement says. They won, too. With the territorial government, a major issue has always been Inuit hiring percentage. The territory is 85% Inuit. The agreement says the government of Nunavut should be 85% Inuit, too. That percentage has been stalled at just under 50% for a decade, and most of those are lower-level positions. Tunngavik is looking at all programs and powers that they think could help Inuit.
Do we want to look at specific programs? Do we want to look at health services? Do we want to look at education services, the school system? Do we want to take aspects that and use self-government in that way? And I think one of the things that we want to do is look at different models across Canada and elsewhere to see what things we can learn and what things have been working well. And
for self-government to become a reality in Nunavut, both the territorial and federal governments will have to give up some power. The Nunavut Agreement would have to be reopened. It could mean fundamentally reimagining Nunavut.
I think part of the discussion we're having in terms of self-government is a result of not fully and fairly implementing all 42 articles of the Nunavut Agreement.
Tunngavik hope to have a self-government pitch ready for their partners by October of 2019. For the first time, Inuit are trying to recut some major fundamental pieces of the territory and how it functions. Just how much change? That depends on what Inuit want and what the people with the power are willing or can be convinced to hand over. Nunavut is entering 2019 with some big picture questions to answer. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, at Shakeup.
1 year after a deadly plane crash in Saskatchewan, Canada's Transportation Safety Board is releasing recommendations from its investigation. The plane went down less than a kilometer from the Fond du Lac runway in northern Saskatchewan. A 19-year-old man who had cerebral palsy died in hospital after the plane went down. 24 others were injured. Investigators found there was ice on the aircraft during takeoff. They say the plane was not de-iced. The TSB's recommendations will aim to avoid a similar incident in the future. As the Blood Tribe in southern Alberta continues to struggle with an opioid crisis, a program there is creating some hope. A group of young adults who were struggling went back to school, graduated, and are starting new jobs. Tamara Pimentel has that story.
It's a moment Lori Eagleplume has worked hard for, receiving her certificate in customer service and sales.
It's been a long time since I accomplished something big in my life.
33 Blood Tribe members are graduating from a program created by Lethbridge College and Blood Tribe Social Development to help adults get back on their feet and become independent. They develop skills in either frontline cooking, disabilities and addiction support work, or customer service. Most here have been employed after their practicums. While the community struggles with an opioid crisis, Arnold Fox of Social Development says programs like this are needed more than ever.
We're talking about that portion of the population who haven't, for whatever reason, haven't accessed the regular education stream, so that they will have some measure of success when they apply for jobs, and if they want to go back to school, they'll be well prepared.
Like most graduates here, the journey hasn't been easy for Eagleplume. She overcame many barriers to get to this point. 4 years ago, she was struggling with addictions, almost lost her home and her children, until she made the choice to undergo Suboxone treatment.
Being a recovering drug addict, it gets really hard at times, and seeing what my reserve is going through, so many close ones, are addicts now, I never ever thought I'd be the one, getting told, oh, you're such an inspiration, and, it feels really good.
For Eagleplume, this graduation is just a stepping stone. After completing her practicum at the Kainai Wellness Center, she has bigger dreams.
Ever since I got clean off drugs, I really, really want to go into addictions counseling.
Eagleplume now has the skills and motivation to go back to school in September to start working toward her career. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Blood Reserve.
We've got to step aside for a quick break and then the latest from another busy day in Thunder Bay. Here's a look at Saturday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. Rain and a high of +6 for Halifax, -6 and snow for Nain, Happy Valley, Goose Bay. +1 under the sun in Montreal, -1 with snow in Saguenay. +5 in London, Sarnia, and Windsor. +1 in North Bay. +5 for Thunder Bay and sunny skies. 4 above in Sioux Lookout. In northern Manitoba, -11 with snow for Churchill. +2 and rain for God's Lake. +1 under the sun for Gimli and Winnipeg. 3 above with some showers for Dauphin. In Saskatchewan, +4 in Regina and Estevan. +3 with rain in Swift Current. In the northern part of the province, -13 for Uranium City. Welcome back. As we've been reporting, Thunder Bay police are now investigating the death of 17-year-old Braden Shakeup as a homicide. The young man from Webequie had been in the city for counseling services when he was last seen by his family on December 5th. Shakaup's body was found on a golf course in Chapels Park last Sunday. Police say there were signs of trauma on his body. Autopsy results Thursday afternoon confirmed he was murdered. Police won't give any further details but say it's an isolated case with no risk to public safety. Deputy Chief Don Lewis says he's confident in investigators and hopeful they will have the case solved soon for the family.
There's an enormous amount of information that's been received and continues to come in with respect to when Braden went missing, when the body was discovered and all the movements in between, and people that he was associating with at the time. So all that information is, to this moment, is being followed up.
An administrator will now take over the Thunder Bay Police Services Board for 1 year in what is being called an emergency. That's the result of the second highly anticipated report regarding the Thunder Bay Police to be released this week. In his report, Senator Murray Sinclair says the Thunder Bay Police Services Board failed repeatedly to address concerns from the city's Indigenous community. The Ontario Civilian Police Commission appointed Sinclair to investigate the board in July 2017. Lawyer Thomas Lockwood has been named the administrator who will assume all board power until new board members are appointed and trained. The report said the board also failed to address systemic racism problems within the service. First Nations lawyer Selena Reitberger was recently selected the board's first Indigenous chair. She says she's ready to get to work with the administrator who arrives on Sunday.
We have to admit it. We're going to admit it, and I am going to ask that it be done formally, that it be done with in a circle with elders and people who maybe people who have already been the subject of racism. And I think there should be ceremony, and I think it should be done in a good way. I am welcoming the help because I think we need it, and it's going to come with a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of resources. This is a new dawn, a new beginning, and so we'll do it right.
Starting next week in Vancouver, the first of 21 cross-country 60s Scoop settlement information sessions will begin. Members of the settlement claim can be eligible for anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000. Here to explain more is Melanie Vincent of the Huron-Wendat Nation. Hello, Melanie. Thanks for joining us. Who's organizing the 60 Scoop info sessions and why?
Actually, Collectiva, who is the claim administrator for the 60 Scoop settlement, has been approached to organize different sessions across the country. And the purpose of those sessions is actually to offer eligible class members an occasion to meet in person with Collectiva, and also the Indigenous partners like myself who have been contracted by Collectiva to provide those sessions. So the goal is to provide information on the claim process specifically, and people will be able to ask questions fill out the claim form on site if they need to or if they want to, with the technical help that will be made available at the sessions. And but one thing is very important is that Colectiva always provides 24-hour support through their toll-free line, and anyone who can't attend the sessions, it really doesn't matter if they can attend or not, they can still fill out the claim. But those sessions also aim at informing as much as possible, or as many eligible class members as possible that are eligible to file a claim for this settlement.
So are only potential claimants allowed to attend?
No, anyone can attend, of course, families, friends, organizations that are interested, people in the communities, in the cities. Anyone can attend, actually, who is interested to get that information.
And so what are your upcoming dates and places, and where can people go to find out more?
Yeah, okay, so the first session is happening next week in Vancouver. So that session is scheduled for Monday, December 17th. The next one after that will be in Thunder Bay, so on Tuesday, December 18th. And we also have a session in Toronto on December 21st. And after that, we have 21 scheduled sessions, and people can find out what the dates are, the venues, locations, through the website, which is 60scoopsettlement.info.
Melanie, appreciate you taking some time to provide us with some information on all this.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
During the day, the Open Door Shelter is a refuge for many of Montreal's disproportionately large Indigenous homeless population. Despite being recently forced to move, the shelter appears to have landed on its feet, although some of the challenges their clients face appear to have followed. Tom Fenario has that story.
I try to carve like every day, but sometimes we run out of stones.
John Awa learned how to carve soapstone from his uncle in Pond Inlet, Nunavut. Awa has spent the last 11 years in Montreal, until recently, much of it living rough on the streets.
I actually got an apartment through the Open Door housing program.
Even though the Open Door Shelter helped him get his own place, Awa still comes here to work. At the Open Door's old location, carvers had to work outside. Now, he can work here year-round.
This is our carving room. If you look up, there is ventilation up there.
David Chapman is the director of the Open Door Shelter. About a week and a half ago, the shelter packed up and moved to this new location. There's no doubt that the new amenities here are an improvement. Showers, more than one bathroom, a walk-in fridge.
So we don't have to deal with the problem of rotting produce anymore.
But as the saying goes, location is everything. The old Open Door was conveniently next to Cabot Square, a longtime gathering place for many of the city's vulnerable and homeless Indigenous population. But over the last 5 years, the area has seen renovations followed by non-stop condo construction. The Open Door's old location, a former church, was sold and is up next on the development slate.
It's gentrification. See them move to a certain sector of the city and localized. And, you know, when you have $400 million condo developments going up, generally there's some kind of planning behind that.
Despite being a 40-minute walk from the old site, Chapman estimates that about 50% of the old clientele are coming to the new Open Door. Unfortunately, some of the same problems that plagued the old location are making the trip as well.
She woke up and he was straddling her, trying to take off her pants and get his hands underneath her clothes. She was able to fight him off, and then he brutally beat her.
This incident was relayed to intervention worker John Tessier last Thursday by an Inuk woman. The Open Door team says that since 2017, 19 Indigenous women have come to them with accounts of sexual assault or rape suffered on the streets.
Of those 19 cases, only one has made it almost to the court. Only one.
Chapman says a big reason for that is many women feel going through the process of speaking to police is not worth it. In February at the Quebec Inquiry into Indigenous Relations, Chapman testified that police need to do a better job working with vulnerable women on the streets. For one, he would like to see police come to the women in order to gather statements.
Is it all about legal purity? Really? Is that really what it's all about? You can't bring audio and video to a space that someone feels comfortable because you're interested in legal purity? Really? Well, you know, woman after woman is raped on the street. Get over yourselves.
Tessier says that although the police that initially responded to the call were sympathetic, they detained the alleged assailant briefly before releasing him, and that an investigator did not call to take a statement about the incident until 4 days later. Tessier added he then had to accompany the Inuk victim to her appointment at the station. He described the whole process as arduous and uncomfortable for the woman, and is frustrated that they appear to be back to square one with police after making headway with their old local station last year.
We had worked it out with Station 12, where we were in the area we were last by Cabot Square, that, you know, if the victim was unwilling to go to the police station, that we could have a detective come meet us.
Montreal police do not comment on cases that are under investigation. According to Chapman, the story has some silver lining. A donor gifted the victim a ticket back to her home community in Nunavut. And while it may technically count as another person that the open door has helped get off the streets, people here wish the circumstances were different and that they don't happen again. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
Time for another quick break, but there's more to come. Stick around. Here's the rest of Saturday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta, minus 14 with snow for high level. A different story in the southern part of the province, plus 5 under the sun in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. In British Columbia, plus 9 with showers for Tofino and Victoria, plus 3 in Bella Coola. Minus 14 in Fort Nelson, 10 below for Dease Lake. In the Yukon, minus 29 in Old Crow, 26 below for Beaver Creek. Over to NWT, 25 below for Wrigley and Norman Wells, minus 22 in Yellowknife. Minus 23 for Sax Harbor and Pawlatuck, 28 below for Fort McPherson. Minus 15 in Baker Lake, Arviette and Chesterfield, 25 below in Cambridge Bay, minus 28 in Resolute. Welcome back. It's a blustery day, to say the least, in the Vancouver area and parts of the BC interior. A wind warning is in effect, and Environment Canada is cautioning there's potential for damage. Meteorologists say wind gusts could hit 90 kilometers per hour in the city throughout the day and into the evening. This next story gives a whole new meaning to making it rain.
Brinks truck, the money fell out. There's money all over Route 3. No joke. Can't make this up.
A door malfunctioned on a Brinks truck during morning rush hour in New Jersey, and money blew everywhere. Drivers pulled over to collect the cash. Incredibly, more than $6,000 was returned by Good Samaritans. Wonder how much didn't get returned. That's your APTN National News for this Friday. Thanks for tuning in. For more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and download the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Have yourself a great weekend.